Welcome back to episode, can you believe it, Josh? 73 of
73.
the Have We Made It Yet podcast. I was about to say the Everything Everywhere podcast for a second, but I legit can't believe it. Again, this is the podcast where two creatives, San's guest today, talk about the process of making it. As always, my name is Lucas Ng, the actor portion of this podcast.
And my name is Josh Young, the comedian portion of this podcast. I remembered this time to say my given Chinese name because I've been saying for a little bit, like I got to change my stage name for that pronunciation. Josh Young, the young, to try and change things up, you know. But I've slipped a few times before, but now I got it right. Remember that, Josh Young, the comedian portion.
Are you actually going to tell like people who intro you up, like phonetically spell your name so that they'll say Young instead of Yang?
I mean, at some point, yes, I should. Maybe I should soon, once I'm getting more into the hang of doing more and more shows. But yeah, it'll be a process. I think it'll take time. It'll take time either way.
I hear you, man. Yeah. And you hit the nail already, though. It is a process. And like every episode that we've done for 70 plus episodes, Josh, I have to ask you the question. Josh, have you made it yet?
I have not made it yet. 73 episodes in. You would expect that many episodes. Maybe we would have made it at least closer. Maybe it's a little closer, but nope. Not for me. I have not made it yet. Just a little update. I guess this weekend I'm doing 2 shows, which is nice. A little bit more packed than before. Sunday is a bit bigger. I'm doing 15 minutes nice. Again. The only other time I did that was in Mexico, but I'm confident I can do 15 now. So that'll be a good show to do in Toronto to try out the 15 in a Toronto audience, a bigger audience, if anything. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. And then hopefully try to do more shows throughout the summer. And then I'm thinking of going back to Vancouver as well in August for maybe 3 weeks, August to September for 3 weeks. So maybe we'll be able to do some shows there. And then maybe the podcast will finally reunite in person, Lucas.
Can't wait, man. See you in person with a camera in front of us. We haven't done that since like last night.
Wait, what? Yeah. Well, okay. Well, yeah. And then officially on the podcast, we haven't done that since the first 5 episodes.
That's true.
Almost 2 years and 5 months ago, 2 years, 4 months ago. So
yeah.
Wow. But yeah, I'm looking forward to potentially that, seeing my buddy Lucas as well, you know, co-host, my other half of the screen of the Have We Made It Yet podcast. So yeah, you know, it's going to be a good summer. I
know I've seen your 5 minutes, but you have another like 10 more minutes of new jokes and everything like that.
Wow. Yeah. When was the last time you saw me live?
It was at this bar along Queen Street.
Yeah. That was probably like last summer. Yeah. So like in Vancouver over last fall, winter, I did 10 minutes, which ended up being about 12 minutes when I recorded it. And that was the first time I did that long before. And that was like, I didn't know what to expect. I did some new jokes as well, but seeing the reaction to that and then how it felt to do 10 minutes, it felt very different to doing 5 and 7. Like it felt like I could slow things down a bit and actually enjoy it, the experience a bit more. And then 15 minutes as well. It felt like, you know, I was able to get through all of my material at a good pace, some new jokes. So now I'm looking forward to trying it again in Toronto. And yeah, maybe hopefully you'll be able to see me do like 10 minutes or 15 minutes in Vancouver.
Yeah. So unfortunately, when you do your show at Clinton's, this episode will already be, your show will already been passed by the time this episode is released. Yeah. But like literally everyone follow Josh so that you know when his next shows are, because this man is damn hilarious. And the world needs to know that. So check out Josh.
Slowly and steadily, 1 dozen viewers at a time. Yes. But anyways, enough about my turtle crawl of a making it process. But Lucas, hey.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff. Have you made it yet?
You know what, Josh? I might get a little introspective here, but no, I have not yet made it. But as everyone probably saw for like the last 3 episodes, if you do watch this on YouTube, which I hope you do, it's a new background, new surroundings, new city, new province, and all that stuff. So yeah, I have moved here, and I'm currently in Vancouver, the place where I was basically raised my whole life before going to Toronto. And it's been a wild ride, man. Just because I've never been busier than I've ever been. This is the busiest I've ever been in anywhere in this part of my life. And on the acting front, though, things have like progressed pretty well too.
Nice.
Yeah, like I got handed up to like Josh, you and I, our hustle. Just because I think even Milton said it in the last episode. He was like, most people give up on a podcast in like 10, 20, maybe 30 episodes. But like we are scratching at close to 100 right now.
Close to 100. That's
close to 100. Almost to the last quarter. Once we hit 75, we're almost there. And as a result of this podcast, and it's also kind of intentional too, after my partner and I had decided that we were going to move back, I wanted to meet some like Vancouver actors and producers and directors. And as a result, like the thing that we built virtually here has now manifested itself physically. I was at Natasha Jung's documentary screening, which everyone should check out. Incredible documentary. But she held a screening, and some of our former guests were at that same screening. And although I've never met them physically in person or anything like that, they recognized me, and they came up to me and said, "Hey, Lucas, great to finally meet you."
Wow.
And yeah, like I do got to hand it up to like you and mine's and yours is commitment too in this whole thing, that what we made digitally is now manifesting itself physically. So it's a big part in building this new community that I need to build in this new city. And I'm really grateful for that whole thing.
Yeah. And when you told me about that the first time, like that happened, I was like, wow, you know what? Some of our hard work over time has, borne fruit just by being able to be, kind of recognized, and then also like have a certain type of project that we can share when we're talking to people, and then people can look at it and it's like, oh, I've heard of it. That's great. I mean, like, I don't even know what our realistic expectations of doing this podcast was. I think we just had an idea, it seemed interesting. Maybe we could keep track of our experiences. And then, just the mere fact that we have some guests and they are able to share it amongst the little artist community, be able to get some, name recognition there is already like pretty helpful, I think. So great to hear that. Yeah.
And what I find here in this new city is that, as I'm sure you experienced when you first went to Toronto, it's consistently finding new facets of yourself. I'm not sure how you were in Vancouver, Josh, because I don't think I met you in Vancouver.
No.
But I will assume that you are a much different person before you came to Toronto.
Absolutely, I would say so. Because like even comedy and this whole element of it, I didn't see that as something that was like for me. I think initially my only concept of it was either like famous comedians that I knew, or occasionally I would go to the comedy mix downtown whenever there was like somebody I knew had free tickets or whatnot. But just the idea of doing an open mic, I just didn't think it made sense to me. I lived out in Coquitlam. It was far from everything. I just didn't hear about that many open mics or stuff. But in Toronto, there were so many. I would hear it about so many different shows. I heard about the class that I took. And it just felt like it was something more within grasp, within reach to try. And if I didn't even realize how valuable it was an experience to me personally. Because I don't know, I feel like when I came to Toronto, I was still stuck in a bit of like a living at home mentality, kind of
Right.
like sheltered in my thoughts or in my head, kind of. But it required me leaving that environment and going to Toronto and going on my own, trying different things in order to kind of get out of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel really good about what I've done so far, and just a matter of really just maintaining the motivation
Yeah.
to keep hustling, keep going forward with it. I mean, it's been tough, of course, to keep that drive going, but
Yeah.
you just got to keep going, I guess.
And you hit the nail too. It's that drive that is pushing you at the same time. And what I realized, of course, when at least we both lived in Toronto, Josh and I both live in Toronto. He is still there. What I thought was, after reflecting back and I'm having time here, is that it was solely my time in Toronto. I didn't really have any other obligations other than my industrial obligations, my work obligations, and friends, which we saw like close to every weekend and everything like that. But it was solely me time. I didn't have any other obligations other than the things I wanted to do. And as a result, there's a lot of different roles that I had neglected and everything. So after moving back here, the reason why I say I'm the busiest I've ever been is that there were a lot of things that, for a lack of a better term, I think I ran away from, as opposed, after moving out here.
Right.
After moving out to Toronto and then arriving back, I neglected the role of being like a son for a lot. I neglected the role of being a brother.
Right.
I neglected the role of a of being a good son-in-law. I neglected roles that are pretty common and I think assumed, but so much of that last 80 years that I was in Toronto, of course, was all about like industrial worth and how I can progress myself in acting and also work too. But there's a lot of things that I put to the wayside that I now have to claim back, because there's a lot of things that are missing, and it's finding myself to be a whole lot more of a rounded person now. Not only am I an actor, I am also a son. I also have to be a good partner to my girlfriend and everything. I also have to make sure that with being a good son, that my parents are okay because I'm that much closer. There's no more excuse of, well, it's so far away. It's now like, this is what it takes for you to not only balance your familial life, but also your romantic life, but also your family life too. This is what it means to be a real human being now, and making sure that I grapple through all of that at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, to a certain degree, a little bit of that kind of like family connection was one of the reasons I kind of left Toronto, because I had lived at home for so long that I felt like I was stuck in that environment, and leaving it was necessary. And it's interesting for you that you've been away for a certain period of time now, that our priorities change, and then what we want and what we value also change and adapt at different stages of our lives. And just to be able to like recognize that as like you wanted to be closer to family and make that move is not an easy decision to make, of course. But at the same time, I see how you've identified that as the right decision, and like making it and like going through all the potential ups and downs of it. It was still very important to you. So I commend you on being able to, make that shift, make that change, and really change your entire life from Toronto back to Vancouver, and find that balance. So.
And I'm not sure if, like, my dad had said this. I'm not sure if you will also agree, but I did want to posit this out to you because, of course, you're in Toronto and you left from Vancouver and everything. Like when I went back to this city, I'm like, how can anyone afford to live in this city? It's so expensive, blah, 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 blah. Like, I grew resentful, like, in the first, like, couple of weeks here.
Yeah.
But then my dad said, it's like, what if you had stayed for the past 8 years here in whatever career you wanted to be in, whether it be acting or visual effects or whatever, even if you were like a real estate agent,
Yeah.
how much more time and how much more growth would you have in this city if you just would have stayed here for the past 8 years? How much deeper would your connections have been? How much easier would your shorthand would be with all your colleagues and your community of like-minded workers? How much deeper would that be?
Right.
So as a result, it's like, yeah, I am starting over. I am starting over again for literally the third time in my life again. And I think that comes with, kind of excitement, that kind of entrepreneurship spirit. But that I am running into that same issue again where, I'm starting from the bottom again and I need to build myself up at an age where I'm not young anymore. So that's also the terrifying part. But I want to get your input on this. It's like, are you willing to start over again?
I mean, that's interesting because I was listening to some other podcasts recently, like one with Fahim Anwar on Joe Rogan's podcast, because Fahim Anwar recently put out a special on YouTube called Hat Trick, and it's based off of like the 3 rooms at the Comedy Store in LA. And like he mentioned how he's been in comedy for about 20 years now, and he seems like he's only like mid to late 30s, maybe. I mean, he's a relatively younger looking guy, but he said he's been in comedy for about 20 years.
Yeah.
Unless I'm getting that mixed up. Either way, a long time. But he's like, but something they talked about was like, man, comedy is not a young man, not old man's game. Because like trying to get into it at 40 or 50, it's like, no, there's so much of the grind and the innate element of the environment of like needing to go do shows on the road, doing not making a lot of money in the beginning. It's not stable at all. But at the same time, when it comes to building comedy and the craft of it, like you still need to go through that in order to find your comedic voice and develop your experience and skill set that way. Yeah. And it's something that's like there's so many more obstacles to that if you don't have kind of the youth or the freedom to only focus about that and minimize your kind of overhead, whether it's family, whether it's like a full-time job or stuff like that. So it's like it does give me some pause in my head as well, because I just turned 30. And that was kind of odd, because it's like, I didn't expect the 20s to happen so quickly, I guess. The last 4 or 5 years, especially in Toronto, is like I moved to Toronto. It's like, I'm still trying to figure shit out with like jobs and stuff. And then last year or year and a half or so, I felt like, with comedy, I feel like this is something I can do. And then like getting my current job, it's like, that's feels like a good step in the right direction in terms of like a kind of a tech jobs opportunities and stuff like that. And I'm like, I just turned 30, and now it's like entering a different paradigm a little bit, because then you're not 20 where you can semi afford to spend that time figuring things out. So then at the same time, I'm wondering, if I knew about comedy younger, then it's like, also with the pandemic missing a couple of years, like being able to develop more material and then having a little bit more of a runway to start. Whereas now at 30 is like, maybe I'll be in Toronto for a couple more years. And then if I can find a job that allows me to move to New York, then it's like starting again in New York. But at the same time, I'm still starting very early in comedy in Toronto. So, that will probably happen. Like if I really wanted to go to New York and like live and work and potentially do comedy there, that will start. I will have to, restart it from the bottom at an older age. But that's something I think I've accepted. That's still relatively within range. But at the same time, it's like, I guess I'm more slow and steady, but I feel like I should have a bit more urgency in what I view as goals comedically. So I guess for you, one question I would have is like, now that you're restarting in Vancouver, albeit I feel like with more connections than like maybe when you started here in Toronto because of like a little bit of our podcast, but also now that you have experience, you can like tackle it a bit better. I mean, like, do you feel like there is added pressure to now being in Vancouver with how you view maybe like how old you are or like at what stage you are?
Absolutely. And I don't think I might have used the word like terrifying, but I like the word that you said. It was a sense of urgency. And I know, like, I've listened to enough acting podcasts in my life, Sam Jones, even Jeb Beach, a great acting coach in Vancouver, the Audience Experience podcast. And never do they ever say that rushing makes everything better. I am doing everything in my power to try to make it happen to the best of my ability. I'm probably missing things, but from what I know, if I'm given two options, I think I'm doing the best one that would further be in my path. But I think right now, if there's anything that has afforded me the ability to do what I'm doing, it's that sense of urgency. Once I came back to Vancouver after recovering from COVID and like moving in here and getting furniture, I went on a streak of just applying to different agencies. So within 4 days, I applied to close to 10 agencies. And from that list of 10 agencies, 4 of them reached out back to me to want to prepare for meetings. And one of those 4 was on my list of like really ones that I wanted to go with. It was actually my number 1 choice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then in one agency, 3 agents wanted to meet with me, which really made me feel good because they don't know me. I'm new to this city, right? Yeah. Again, starting over. And from that, I started like paring down who I wanted to go with. Eventually, I went down to 2. And then about maybe like 4 weeks now ago, I signed with my number 1 choice of my agency. And again, if there's anything that you think you're lacking, try to remedy that. But I think for anyone listening, I think urgency always gives the best results just because you just got to get stuff done. So auditions have been coming in. I got a cool one for a yet to be released city TV show and all that stuff. So we'll see when that happens. But right now, Vancouver is on an incline in terms of productions that are happening. Come June and July. So I'm expecting this one to be the busiest summer, juggling work, juggling family life, romantic life, and acting life at the same time. So I think I made the right decision in coming to Vancouver, but even if I didn't, I'm trying to make the very, very, very best of it because this is home and this is what I chose to do. So let's make it happen.
Absolutely, man. And I'm excited to see how you're gonna hit the ground running in the summer. You've already hit the ground running. I mean, you found a new agency. You're gonna a little new agency with some more roots in Vancouver, and be able to kind of take that and move it forward. I mean, it is a lot of juggling, and I think that's part of the whole thing of making it. It's never really a straight line.
No.
You definitely need to figure out how you can tackle it to the best of your ability and juggle everything, everywhere, all at once. Oh,
is that a teaser for like episode 75 or?
Wow, what a transition! What a transition! I just right in there.
Seamless.
Give
me your take on it. Like, just I don't know how to throw it to you, but just give me your take on it.
Well, okay. Well, Lucas and I talked about initially is like we should probably talk about this movie because this movie is it feels like it's a more of a watershed moment. It's like the fruition of what Crazy Rich Asians promised us, in that Crazy Rich Asians kicked off this new wave of Asian like cinema, not just necessarily North America, but definitely impacting North America quite a bit, but internationally as well. So just since Crazy Rich Asians first came out, I think it was 2018 or 2019. Like there's just been, it feels like every year there's been just a standout marquee Asian centered film with a mainly Asian cast. There was like The Farewell. I think that was 2019. 2020 was like Parasite. 2021 was like Shang-Chi and then there was also Squid Game was also huge internationally. It's just a ton of stuff. So it just felt like things were going on an uptrend as more and more projects were coming in.
Yeah.
And just to see how Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's like almost like a big budget, like indie film that just captured word of mouth, recommendations, just buzz and heat. And it's like what was initially a smaller release, but because of how good it was, how everybody who saw it was like crying or just loved the film, it blew their mind. It got a wider release after it was initially released, which is crazy because it's like rarely does any movie like that ever happen. And it's just to see that happened for this movie, and like the subject matter of the movie and how it's focused on like the thing that really like encouraged me, because I never saw Michelle Yeoh in that kind of role before, where it was just a film centered on just her as the main lead. And it's a middle-aged or like older Asian woman as the lead of the film. And just that in and of itself was like, you don't see that movie that often, but the fact that it's also amazing and that it just blows people's minds, that's even more encouraging that that will happen further in the future, and in roles where it's not necessarily just a straight white male as the lead of a big movie. That's not the only typecast character that you can have lead a movie and make it amazing. So I think it's a watershed moment. I could talk endlessly about it. Lucas, what was your initial reaction as well?
Incredible. And I'm so happy that the Daniels did make it.
Yes.
Because, man, this is going to make me sound so dumb. But Lakeith Stanfield's older movie with the Daniels, sorry to interrupt you, incredible. Mixed the absurd with social commentary with beauty at the same time. This movie, of course, like Asian representation, amazing. And I'm so happy that the character who played, the actor that played Waymond, got his comeback. Michelle Yeoh, incredible.
Yeah.
But that movie was obscene, grotesque, but beautiful at the same time. It combined so many facets of the multiverse in terms of like past lives, and it was grand in the same way, but it was incredibly grounded too.
Yeah,
the scene that still like that really shook me to this moment was, I mean, spoiler alert right now, whoever hasn't watched it yet. Can we talk about like major plot points?
I think we can. I feel like we as long as, I mean, if you want to watch it with as little, preamble as possible going in. Thankfully, I went in as well, only knowing it was good or hearing it was good, but I didn't know very many of the specifics. So going in as cold as possible, even though it's super hot right now, is like the best experience. And like I managed to watch it IMAX. So if you can watch it visually, just even of itself, visually, this is like spectacular film to watch. So but yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, like fast forward this if you're watching on YouTube, just fast forward like maybe 2 minutes. But the scene that still like gets me kind of choked up in it, and I haven't had this kind of visceral reaction in a movie in a while, was when the daughter was about to go inside the bagel and she was leaning back. But then Michelle Yeoh's character is like reaching for her. Of course, that's a classic like save your daughter trope. Beautifully done still. But what really got to me still was her grandpa also holding on to Michelle Yeoh, and then the father holding on to the grandpa. And it really does show. It is not just a story about a mother-daughter relationship. It is about their clan together. and how it really does take a family unit to really fight for each other and to really be there for each other, because generational trauma does transcend generations. That's why it's in the name. And what the daughter was trying to do was to rid herself of that trauma because she didn't want to pass it on.
Right.
But at the last moment, Michelle Yeoh's character was willing to be that bridge, so to stop whatever was going to transpire over her. And it's not just one person's job. It's the former generation's job. It's the grandpa's job, but also it's her dad's problem too. Her dad also has a role in all this too. And I found that just completely mind-blowing. Of course, the visuals were incredible for an indie flick, but just also the major point that it's a family unit addressing generational trauma so that it won't transcend onto future generations.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about it as well, like seeing the father and the grandfather come in, it's like those are also not just surface level characters. No. Even though they were secondary characters, like the father, I felt like had so much depth added to his backstory, because like he initially comes off as like, oh, mild-mannered, husband, is like maybe a little timid, is like easygoing, and like when it comes to like coming from like an Asian culture now being transplanted into North American culture and seeing that like maybe timidness, like that kind of like view of like that generation of Asian men is something like we can all recognize, especially as like kids growing up here, as like that was kind of almost the timidness that was the predominant view of how our parents or like our uncles or whatever were viewed. But at the same time, it showed that element, but at the same time, it also put him in completely different elements where it's like it changed his persona. Like when he was like the center universe's like secret agent, it's like he was fully confident, in control, martial arts badass and all of that, but one that was like very inspirational to see. But then all the other different iterations as well, you saw different versions of that character and all the potential impacts of the decisions that those archetypal characters would make. And it also, I mean, it's hard not to see your own parents in that, especially for me. It's like it's weird throughout it because it's not only is it Michelle Yeoh playing like Chinese Asian mom that just reminds me of like my mom and all Chinese Asian moms, that immigrant moms, then Chinese Asian dad, but then seeing that focus on their experience and all the things is like, I don't think there was a better movie to represent my parents. Essentially, it's like it was watching my parents being the center of a movie. It was so trippy and just unbelievable to think about just a few years ago, and to see it was definitely a really impactful moment. And then there's so many themes. Like this movie feels like it could be endlessly studied. It could be like really broken down in so many different ways. So many people would have different connections to it. Like I would just hear constantly, one of the main things I hear from people, like either through other podcasts or like people I know who have seen it, is like they cried during it. Like I haven't heard of very many movies being able to make so many people feel so emotionally connected with it and cry. Like I wasn't able to cry because I cry at other kind of things during movies, but like in terms of the catharsis of what I was watching, it definitely rolled over me. But like, how did you feel about that emotionally? Did you cry at all?
It was that scene that I described when she was falling back into the bagel.
Oh, so that one, did you feel like tears, like the emotion welling up?
Yeah, definitely. Like just it starts always up here and then goes into the throat and all that stuff. But no, like one line that always sticks out to me was when they were referencing, and also just how many references they had to so many different movies, like In the Mood for Love.
Oh, right? Yeah, that was like, great.
There's that great line by is it Waymond or Raymond? I already forgot.
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Waymond is kind of like the accented way of pronouncing it. I don't know. I can't remember exactly.
His character, when he just said to Michelle Yeoh, it's like, in any other lifetime, I'd still be happy doing taxes with you.
Oh, that's a lot of people's favorite. I think I've heard that like quoted so many times. And that scene was so beautifully shot. And just to see those characters, like they were all dressed up as well. It's just see, that's another view of like an Asian man and kind of like that kind of masculine setting that is also very different, because it's not just, he's not just an archetypal, it's a masculine man, whatever. But this is coming from a character who was portrayed differently through other parts of the movie. So it's like it's been how they've handled so many different themes, and then the homages and the absurdity of the comedy and stuff. It's just it's hard to describe any other movie that's like it, and it's consistently being described by so many people as like the best movie they've seen in years, if not the best movie they've seen ever.
And dude, one of the best scenes, or not montages, but one of the best scenes in the movie was one that didn't even have any dialogue. The two rocks. Like, amazing. I love that nihilistic. Well, it's not nihilistic, but it's existentialism kind of way of looking at things. It's like, we're big fucking rocks, man.
Yeah.
Like, what can you do? We're a blip in the universe.
Yeah.
So I've always loved movies that talk about like the human condition and how we are literally everything but nothing at the same time, and trying to reconcile that difference, because when you live a life of nothingness, it drags down on you and you don't want to live. But where do you find meaning in meaninglessness? And that's what I thought really handled that topic well.
They handled so many themes so poignantly and tonally like connected, but at the same time it didn't feel like too much. They handled it beautifully with different comedy elements, absurdity, and it all blended so well with just the plot and the logic of the universe as well. It blows my mind to think is like they made a multiversal movie that might actually be the single greatest attempt at integrating that kind of storyline. At the same time, when Marvel was also releasing Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which has this huge all-encompassing scale of a multiverse through multiple different IPs and stories. But at the same time, when I watched that, the multiverse was nothing but a setting. That was it. It was just a setting that characters went through. It didn't actually impact any of the characters' motivations or decisions, or there wasn't really any kind of madness. It was just a vehicle for the plot to move on. Whereas this felt like the multiversal element was integrated in the experience. Whereas like you're not thinking about the fact that there's so many different versions. You're thinking about how each version is a decision that each person makes, and everybody can make that connection. Whereas like, if I did this right, if I did this wrong, if I made this decision or did not make this decision, is like, what is the sum total of our decisions impacting how we view our current lives and who we are like right now? It's so amazing.
Dude, there's this one Instagram account that I follow called like Film Moment, and they just had stills of all the, not all of course because it went by so fast, but all the different Michelle Yeohs there were. And of course, like when it comes at you so fast, you don't catch many of them, but like just the amount of effort they had to put in for these like literally millisecond montage. Like there was one of her being an alien, there was one of her like being a male prisoner, but it's just like the amount of effort involved in making these small montages just adds great detail in terms of its production. It was just a beautiful movie.
It's hard to fathom the production level, because it's at the same time when it's the visuals, the scale, the action, the execution of how it was shot, it was all so well shot and well executed that it feels big budget. But at the same time, they still kept a quality of an indie film, like almost like an indie aesthetic, because of like how the bagel cult people, like they looked, is like, it didn't seem like they were extravagant costumes. It seemed like they were like kind of basic, almost like DIY costumes, but it still got the point across. And then I love the whenever they switch to like the main dark timeline agents and they're like traveling in the van, or like the grandpa on his like scooter or whatever, that looked like such like film school almost
Yeah.
budget level like costumes. Like it's a colander on your head with like, you know, duct tape and a bunch of like random tubings, household appliances that you find. But it's like it's done with such seriousness and like, you know, executed so well that it was like it maintained that DIY aesthetic, but still as part of this. So it's like it elevated it because it also was absurd in how it looked, but then it with all the other absurdity, and then when they needed to be like very pristine and like they could do that as well. It was just it was almost like a whole film about directors not knowing the meaning of not taking a risk. Like everything just felt like he's like, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
You know, this is a great idea. Let's do it. We're not going to hold ourselves back. It was great. Like, what do you think about, like right now we've got, you know, great word of mouth for it. It's being talked about everywhere. Anybody that sees it, like they cannot endlessly. I've seen so many different, you know, avenues, like different, like Twitch people, comedians on their podcast is constantly talking about it. Other people just like within their family friend group and stuff. I think that if this isn't the best picture at the Academy Awards, or it doesn't win almost every award out there, then it's like, what could be better, you know?
I mean, I think Scorsese is releasing something this year.
What is he releasing?
I don't know. Probably some smaller one. Maybe he's only producing it. But absolutely, I really hope it does win all the accolades. But even if it doesn't, which, to be honest, it's like Hereditary was one of my favorite movies back in 2019, and that didn't win anything.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think this movie, if anything, will be talked a lot more than, say, previous Best Picture winners, such as The Artist.
Absolutely.
In terms of like cultural relevancy at the moment, and also its timelessness now, to be honest, I think it will be a pretty timeless, or at least like what you said, a watershed moment. If it wins awards, great. But even if it doesn't, this movie was incredibly special, and it does deserve whatever release or nationwide release it gets.
Yeah.
And I want to take my folks there to watch it too. That I would never recommend that for any Best Picture nominees, but when I want to take them.
It does feel like it could be something that like my parents could watch and kind of understand, because it's like, it's pretty much their story on the screen. And that would be that would be interesting to broach that subject, to convince them to go watch it.
Yeah.
But then also it's like a lot of it is in Mandarin as well. Like it's not an attempt to just stick to English, but it was like very true to kind of the environment that it's in. And just thinking about how so many people have made a connection with it. And just Michelle Yeoh is like, she's such an OG of not just like Hollywood cinema, but also like international cinema. She's like worked in Hong Kong for like decades before any broad international acclaim.
Yeah.
This is my guess. Like technically and visually, they'll probably get a bunch of nominations as well.
Yeah.
My prediction is Best Picture. They definitely gonna get nominated.
Definitely.
If not, they should win it outright. Okay. I think Michelle Yeoh will get Best Actress nomination. I think she should win it as well, because of like the range through which this film required her character go through. Yeah. Unbelievable. So just the fact that she's able to pull it off. So all the action, all the sentimentality, everything. And I think the father should get a Best Supporting Actor as well. I think their combination is really what holds the film together. And I think that's my big guess for. And director wise, the Daniel should definitely get Best Director noms for it as well, because like execution wise, bringing everything together. And if they don't, then it's like, it's a travesty. It is a crime against art, really. Because if you think about how impactful Parasite was, and this is like a foreign film, but it was like recognized for how good it was, and it won all the awards. This one, I think, is going to blow it out of the water.
That's me knocking on wood, man. I hope so too.
Yeah, me too.
Should we go into Would You Rather?
I mean, we could do it. We could do Would You Rather. We're coming about 45-ish minutes. I think we could do that and end off, and then we're basically under an hour. I know we keep saying we should do a shorter one.
35, baby.
35. What is it? 35 plus 20. This is bonus. We're in bonus time.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm down to do it.
Nice. Did you want to throw yours out, or I can say mine first?
I'll throw, because I feel like I've been talking that last little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, okay, I'll throw you mine. I've thought about this. Would you rather have extremely high IQ but low EQ? Or would you rather have extremely high EQ but low IQ?
I would I don't know why. I'm really trying to like not think like this, but like my initial reaction is always like, what would make me more money? But no, it's like money is money. You'll get money. I would probably go with more EQ and low IQ, because there's nothing more adorable than a lovable idiot.
Yeah. Because I kind of agree, because like a lovable idiot who has like high emotional intelligence is just going to be like fun to be around, and like you just want them around you because they're always a good time. They're very like probably just open to even talking to you, connecting with you on a level that sure maybe intellectually is not the same, but is like still, doesn't make you feel like anybody's more intellectual than any other, or it doesn't make anybody feel like they're better than the other person. That's how I would view it.
Yeah. And I know it's becoming more and more of a cliche, but they always do say it's, the lasting impression that you leave on a person is never how you gave them gifts or anything. It's always about how you make them feel at the very end. And if you can make a person feel welcomed and just overall warmth and love, then by all means, man, like do that, because that's how you build a community.
It really is. Yeah. And I feel like somebody with high EQ and like low IQ, whatever, I feel like even then they'll probably get further ahead than somebody with high IQ and low EQ.
Yeah.
Because like I've read like, Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, and there's like some talks in there about intelligence or highly intellectual people. It wasn't Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. I'm not too sure, but it was like there was this reference to one guy who was like highest IQ ever recorded, or like so high, much higher than Albert Einstein. But he just ended up, the guy was just like working in a small town, and you would have no idea that he was actually super smart. But because like his intelligence kind of hamstringed him a little bit with like a little bit of like pride, or like self-importance, or like just the intelligence is like so either so logical or so whatever. It just sometimes that can hamstring your ability to recognize like what is kind of valuable in social interaction, or being able to connect with other people. And that's like, I think I would agree with you as well. It's like I would rather have high EQ than high IQ.
Yeah.
Because like you could be the smartest person in the world, but if you're a dick, it's a lonely existence.
Yeah. There's this guy that Ricky Gervais's like partner. He was a bald guy, but I'm not sure if you know his name. I forgot his name too, but he just
Carl.
Yeah.
Pilkerton.
Yeah. Funniest guy in the world. And apparently like none of it is scripted. It's all natural, but it's just like the way he asks questions, it's just so endearing. And I want to be around that person, man. It just seems like a really great time.
Yeah. And it's like, it's interesting. Those type of people is like, it's almost like a combination of, I don't know, because it's not necessarily EQ. It's almost a certain amount of just like lack of ego, where it's like they just ask questions, or just very blunt and straightforward, but not in a way where it's like, even if it's potentially offending anybody, it's not in a way where it's like it's coming from a place of malice. It's like genuine, like, oh, that's just the actual, question. That's just the way they think. There's like no actual nefariousness behind it. And it's like, yeah, those people also, it all ends up just coming off as like charisma or, you know, that kind of like confidence, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Okay, to cap it off for me, okay, we somewhat talked about it, but
yeah,
this is mine. Would you rather make it as a comedian, but eventually have a bad relationship with your parents, or the opposite, maintain a good relationship with your parents, even better than it is right now, but never, ever make it as a comedian?
That's kind of interesting because I feel like the way I grew up, like, I don't think I talked so much or connected so much with my parents. So my experience there isn't like, I think my sister like talks and connects with them a bit more. It's like, that's probably because like she's also like a little younger at different stages of like my parents' lives. But I don't know. I feel like I don't think I have super, you know, talking about everything type of relationship with my parents. And I probably, when I'm in Toronto now, it's like a little bit less interaction than I would have before. So that's like a kind of a tough question. It's like, ideally long term, I would like to have a better relationship with them. But granted, I feel like right now at my current, you know, where I'm at, it's a little tougher to even maintain that anyways. So I feel like I would answer that differently at different stages of my life, probably.
Nice.
Maybe like what I know overall long term for like what would be good for everybody, I think would be to have a better you know, relationship with my parents and in that element. Yeah. And then I guess the comedy thing, I'd rather be a comedian than absolutely no relationship with the parents. No, I feel like I guess I think I would probably still choose the better relationship with your parents because they're still, because like I can't say it's like, oh, I'll just go comedy and like just cut everything off now, because that's like maybe that just cuts off the hope of it. And I think maybe in the end, it's like when I start a family as well, I would ideally like to have the connection between the generations be there. So I think that's what I would ultimately rather have.
You just don't want it enough.
I just
I'm kidding.
Ooh, you've brought it back to perspective. Maybe I really that's the question you ask like people who make it or don't make it. It's like, yeah, the ones that make it,
what did it cost?
Yeah, are the ones that really just sacrificed everything.
Yeah. Thanos, man, he said it right. What did it cost? Everything. Everywhere, all at once. That's our end. Josh, where can people find you, man?
At Josh Young comedy, YANG comedy, across all social media. And then also, you can listen to Sleep with Josh podcast, but I haven't put anything out in a long time. So I don't know what you know, don't at me. And but yeah, other than that, keep watching this podcast. Go watch Everything Everywhere All at Once. And Lucas, what are your handles?
Everyone can find me across social media at Lucas John Ing. Again, that last name is just 2 letters. N for Nancy, G for golf. Like follow me because things are happening, and I want you along there for the ride, Josh, and everyone else there too. If you like what you see and hear, follow us at HWMIY podcast on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. We're also on YouTube, so come follow us there too. Awesome, Josh. Applause to you.
Oh, applause to you, my friend, for handling last week, by the way. Good job. That was a great episode. Even like, I apologize for not being there. Something came up at work, but you know what? Hey, you handled it magnificently. I could not trust another person with this podcast, knowing that we can take punches and and anything that comes our way. So great job.
Thanks, brother. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Shout out to Will. I was about to call him Wilton, but no, Milton. Thanks for being a good guest on that one, man.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll see you all in 2 weeks' time. Peace out.
Peace.